You guys, Erin here, back with another moon update for you. And I will also be discussing some of the other prominent astrological forces we are currently receiving. But let's start out by talking about this full moon we've got coming up just around the corner here, taking place on Sunday, October 9th at 1:54 p.m. Pacific time. So this full moon takes place in the sign of Aries, 16 degrees Aries. So as with any full moon, this is the peak of a growth cycle that began approximately 6 months ago when we had a new moon in the sign of Aries. And over that 6 months, we've all been experiencing this growth that's related to the sign of Aries. This full moon is a time to look back and honor this growth. How have you grown in the ways of an Aries? I'll break down that sign of Aries in just a moment here, but something else to mention as well. As soon as this full moon starts to wane, so if it takes place at 1:54 Pacific time, then at 1:55, the moon starts to wane. And if we want to stay in the natural flow of things, that's a time to start letting go some of this Aries energy that you may have taken on that is not serving you. Okay. So Aries is the cardinal fire sign. This is the sign that projects us into Aries. It's the first sign of the zodiac. It's the beginning of the zodiacal season, and it's very forceful. All the cardinal signs, Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn, they all have this force that comes with them. But Aries being the cardinal fire sign, this energy definitely comes with force. This is a very energetic sign. Okay. This is ruled by Mars. You may have heard Mars being referred to as the planet of war. Well, that's what makes Aries what it is. Aries is the warrior of the zodiac. Now, if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, well, geez, I'm an Aries and I'm not a warrior, that's because there's so much more to the natal chart. If you're an Aries and say your sun is right next to Saturn, then that really changes the Aries energy within you. However, we're not focusing on that. We're focusing on the Aries energy in and of itself. Now, something else to mention here. Of course, we all experience this 16 degrees Aries full moon, and it's time for all of us to really honor the growth that we've experienced that, is related to this warrior type of energy, this ambitious energy. However, it's also incredibly unique to each and every one of us. And a lot of that depends on where the sign of Aries comes through your own natal chart. Which house in your natal chart does the sign of Aries rule? If you're using a Placidus house system, then you need to see exactly where 16 degrees Aries is coming through your natal chart. And if that's too much for you, that's okay. We just take a step back and focus on this Aries energy. But if you want to learn more about that, please do schedule an astrology reading through my website, erinwageastrology.com. If you get a reading with me, you get the video recording. So you can always go back to see which area of your life any of these new moons or full moons manifest through. It could be coming through your house of career, your house of relationships, your house of karma, your house of health. There's all these different areas of your life that these new moons and full moons manifest through. And it's really great when we get to know our natal chart, we can start to follow these things along and really tap into what it is we're trying to bring into fruition. Okay, so Aries, again, this is this very ambitious energy. It's the ram. It will literally ram whatever is in its way. Okay, so let me go ahead and pull up the chart for this full moon in Aries. Okay, so for those of you who are new to my recordings, what I work with here is geocentric Western astrology. So with that said, we put us right in the middle here, okay? And these symbols right here, these are all the symbols for the celestial bodies. Like here's Pluto, here's Saturn, here's Neptune, here's Jupiter, okay? And if we go in the wheel a little ways, these are the symbols for the zodiac signs that these things will be beaming through at the time of this full moon. Okay. And something to mention here, if you're a little more advanced, this right here is a symbol for the sun. Okay. The sun is at 16 degrees Libra. We can see that right here. For everybody, the sun is at 16 degrees Libra on the day of this full moon. However, it could be anywhere else throughout this wheel, depending on your own location. So don't get too caught up in the houses focused on this. And speaking of the houses, let me point this out real quick. When I'm talking about finding Aries in your natal chart, what you want to look for is where the symbol or the glyph for the sign of Aries is. This right here, where I'm circling, that is the glyph for the sign of Aries. And these things that look like a slice of pie are the houses, and that's where the areas of our life are. That's the areas of our life where things manifest. Okay, so look for where that symbol of Aries is, which slice of pie it's coming through, and then learn about the energy of that house. If it comes through your 9th house, it's the house of higher learning. If it comes through your 11th house, it's the house of associates. If it comes through your 2nd house, it's the house of money. So that's why, again, it's so beneficial to get to know these things. Okay, so let's start here, looking at the moon. This is the symbol for the moon. This is the glyph for Aries. Okay, so we can see the moon is at 16 degrees Aries. Now, this is the 2nd decan of the Aries energy. So there's a little twist of Leo energy coming through here to help kind of stabilize it. Aries is that cardinal fire sign that's got the force. We've got a little twist of Leo energy coming in here, and Leo is fixed. So it can kind of stabilize it and hold the energy in a little better. Okay. Now, what we see these dark red lines going straight up and down to the chart here, right? Those are the biggest aspects that are going on. This right here is the sun. Okay. We see the sun is, again, at 16 degrees Libra. We can see the sun and the moon are exactly opposite sides of the zodiac. This is what happens every single time we have a full moon. And this is in part why full moons are so intense, because we've got the mother, the moon, the sun, the father, opposite each other. And there's this incredible magnetic polarity going on between them that we all feel as very intense. We've heard the word lunatic before. Luna is the moon. And there's, stories about people becoming lunatics when it's a full moon. And that's in part why. But what's so important to understand about this here is that Libra, where the sun is the sign of relationships and partnerships, companionships, balance, fairness. It's like the sign of you and me. Okay. Now, Aries is the sign of self. In fact, the motto for the sign of Aries is I am. And so there can be this very strong energy. Of course, so much of this depends on your own natal chart, but there can be this really strong pull. Are you putting way too much focus and energy towards your partner and forgetting to take time for yourself? Or maybe you're putting way too much energy towards yourself and leaving your partner behind, that type of thing. Try to keep that imbalanced in days surrounding this full moon, especially for this one. This is important. Okay. Now, also, I'm going to talk about why everything I just said about the relationships and partnerships is amplified, and I'll tell you why in just a moment here. But first, let's scoot on down here to Chiron. We can see that Chiron is right next to the moon. For this full moon, Chiron and the moon will be right next to each other. And with that said, they want to blend together. They kind of want to work as one here. Now, Chiron has a lot to do with healing. Chiron is described as the wounded healer. Okay. And I've heard a lot of other keywords be associated with Chiron. It can have to do with marriage and other things, but it's most commonly described as the wounded healer. And it has a lot to do with wounds that we experience from early childhood or potentially coming from past lives. And we go throughout these transits and progressions in our life that give us opportunity to heal from those wounds. And a lot of that influence comes from Chiron. Okay, now Chiron, as I've mentioned in so many of my other videos, Chiron is going through the sign of Aries. Again, Aries is the sign of self. This is an incredible time for self-healing. How are you doing on your healing journey? Chiron is in retrograde, okay? And since the moon is full and shining her light right on Chiron in retrograde, this is a really good time to sort of reevaluate your healing protocol. How are things going on? What's working for you? What's not working for you? Because what's not working for you, as soon as this full moon starts to wane, that you can let that stuff go. Okay. Now moving on up here to Venus, which is right next to the sun. Venus is the influencer of love and relationships. She's actually the ruler of Libra. She rules Taurus and Libra, just to be clear. But she's in one of her own homes in the sign of Libra. So she works super comfortably here. She gets to work the way she wants to. She gets to influence relationship type of energy. However, she's right next to the sun. Okay. Venus and the sun really don't like to be that close together. There's qualities to it for sure. When people have Venus conjunct the sun in their natal chart, there's definitely some qualities that can come through with that. Venus can kind of soften that sun energy. But it's like the the sun's kind of getting burned out. Venus is kind of getting burned out when they're right next to each other. But that's even more significant because Venus, of course, is opposing Chiron and the moon as well. So we've got Venus and Chiron opposite, and we've got the sun and Chiron opposite, and we've got the sun opposite the moon, and Venus opposite the moon, and Venus opposite Chiron. I hope that all made sense. What you see here are these dark red lines that are going across here. There's this very, very strong opposition going on between all these guys. Okay, so this can definitely be very, very interesting for relationship energy. Again, so much of this depends on your own natal chart, but keep that in mind. There's this kind of just a strong polarity and sort of a weird energy that's going on that can have a strong influence on relationships at the time of this full moon, or really days surrounding this full moon. Okay, so let's see here. What else are we going to mention? Let's talk about this grand trine we've got going on here. We see this blue triangle in the middle of the chart here. Now, this is sort of a weak grand trine, but any grand trine really should be mentioned. Okay, what's going on here? We see one blue line going from here to here. What that is Saturn in the sign of Aquarius, trining up here, really the sun and Venus in the sign of Libra. And then we see this other blue line going down here. This is Mars going through the sign of Gemini. And then this blue line that goes from Mars and Gemini over to Saturn in Aquarius. Okay, Aquarius, Libra, and Gemini. These are the air signs, and they're all communicating at the time of this full moon. They'll actually be communicating for a couple of days, but this energy, the grand trine energy, it's a combination of aspects here, which can definitely be described as harmonious. The air signs are having a harmonious conversation, but on the same token, the air signs have a lot to do with intellect and what's going on up in the mind. There's a lot going on in the chart that is very much about what's going on in the head. And please stick around because I'm going to get to some remedies if you're experiencing some head stuff around the time of this full moon. But it can lead into people just literally like living in their mind, okay, living up in the head. So keep that in mind, especially since Aries, this full moon is in Aries. Aries rules the head, okay? There can be a tendency for a hot head energy going on in the days surrounding this full moon. A lot of stuff going on up here. And not only that, but Mercury is getting into the anaretic degrees anaretic degree of Virgo. That can also lead to a very, very busy mind and nervousness. Okay, so keep all of this in mind. All right, now let's see here. Some other things to mention. Pluto right here. Pluto, I've talked so much about Pluto going through Capricorn, so I'm not going to put too much emphasis on this, but I will point this out. Pluto, on the day I'm making this recording, it's the 7th, Pluto is still in retrograde. The day before this full moon, Pluto goes stationary. It was moving backwards through the sign of Capricorn. Pluto is considered the influencer of incredibly powerful transformation. He's like the destroyer that destroys for the purpose of creating a more powerful rebirth, going through the sign Capricorn. Capricorn rules over the structure of our civilization and also authoritarian establishments. Now, this is a long transit. It's really going on all the way until 2024. I believe it's January of 2024. But regardless, Pluto is going backwards. That's pretty rough energy. When any of the celestial bodies are in retrograde, it can kind of be described as when we're driving our car backwards. Obviously, we don't drive as gracefully as we do when we're moving forward. And not only that, but when we're driving backwards, imagine hitting the brakes all of a sudden, everything in the car, gets rattled. That's kind of the energy that can occur when any of the celestial bodies are going in retrograde, and all of a sudden they put the brakes on. And so Pluto's working in some very interesting ways here, pretty forceful, powerful energy going on. Also, Pluto rules the psyche. So this is a lot going on here. And I keep getting people messaging me, what's going on? All this crazy stuff is going on in my life. We have been experiencing a lot of retrogrades and just a lot of funny little things that can bother the psyche. Okay. Now, let's see here. What else am I going to mention here? Let's briefly touch on this square between Saturn and Uranus. Okay, so here is Saturn, again, going through the sign of Aquarius. Again, this is one I've talked about a lot. Saturn brings discipline and structure and responsibilities and going. The sign of Aquarius is a super, super important sign to understand as we are going into the age of Aquarius. Okay, we're shifting from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. I'll be giving a full presentation on this in November, the second Wednesday of November. Stay tuned to get a link for that if you want to sign up for that. But this Aquarius energy it's this energy of technology. It's the sign of revolutions. It's the sign of great change. It's the sign of, it brings technological changes. It brings sort of a rebellious energy against status quo, anti-establishment type of energy. And here's Saturn, which is great for helping the humanitarian groups, the people who are working for the people who want to be able to take care of themselves and help their neighbors and that type of thing. It's very Aquarius energy. So Saturn's providing some structure for those humanitarian groups, that type of thing. But he's also in retrograde, kind of struggling. But this is also Saturn in some, like the qualities of this is Saturn is kind of giving us the discipline and preparing us for this, you know, Aquarius age, that type of thing, but also putting some restrictions on it, especially because this over here is Uranus, which Uranus and Saturn both rule the sign of Aquarius. So it's really interesting that they're squaring each other and Saturn is going through the sign of Aquarius. Saturn works comfortably in the sign of Aquarius because he rules the sign of Aquarius, but Uranus over here also takes rulership over the sign of Aquarius. And they're doing something called squaring each other, this red line that goes from here to here, which that square can put like some intensity to things and a blockage and not allow for things to flow smoothly. Uranus is over here, especially working a very, there's a lot of intensity coming from Uranus because Uranus is currently conjunct the North Node. That's where energy comes in. So it's like the North Node is helping to bring in this Uranus energy. Now Uranus is this energy that is all about revolutions. Uranus brings spasmodic, sort of electrical energy. Again, it rules that sign of Aquarius. That's where Aquarius gets this energy of technology and information and rebellion that comes from Uranus. Uranus influences this rebellious, revolutionary energy going through the sign of Taurus, which is like the earth of the earth signs. So Uranus is bringing incredibly powerful and abrupt changes to Earth. Okay. And a lot of Taurus rules money. Taurus rules our agricultural systems, the soil, the farm animals. Okay. So there's major changes going on with our money and our agricultural systems. A lot of that has to do with this. And overall, Uranus wants freedom. That's what Uranus wants to bring is freedom, especially to humanity. But there's this block going on, this square between Uranus and Saturn. Now, this is going to start to wane. This is going to start to become, that square is going to start to go away. I think it's really sort of there all the way till March, but it's starting to wane. So we might see some things, we might start to see cryptocurrencies go up. I personally think there's going to be some weird new cryptocurrency thing that comes on the rise that unfortunately, well, I want to go into that, but I don't want to go into it on YouTube because there's some things that I have to be very careful about what I say with that. But I do think that there is potential for the digital currencies to really expand, but probably in some ways that will be very beneficial, in some ways that won't. There's government with sticky fingers in there. Okay. So I'll just leave that there. All right. Now let's see here. We've got Jupiter. This is the last one I'm going to mention here because this is pretty prominent. Jupiter is retrograding in 1 degree Aries. He's going to move back into Pisces for a little while. He was in Pisces earlier this year. Then he moved into Aries and now he's retrograding back. This is very strong energy. And okay. So Aries rules the head. Okay. That head energy, there's a lot going on with it, as I mentioned earlier. And also, before I get too deep into that, I also want to mention Jupiter has a huge influence on our liver, and our livers are very sensitive because of this, Aries retro, it's burning hot. It's retrograding and burning hot through the sign of Aries. So it's a really good time to be taking care of our liver. Just put that out there. Okay, but going back to just this sign of Aries and this full moon in the sign of Aries, Aries rules the top of the head. Okay, so all of us will be experiencing a more sensitive, that part of our body becomes more sensitive anytime the moon goes through Aries, but especially when it's full going through the sign of Aries. Okay, people who are very sensitive will probably feel this. Now, again, so much of this depends on your natal chart, but I thought I'd mention some herbs that can be helpful with this type of thing. Definitely a strong tendency for hothead type of energy. Just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind for yourself and the people who are around you. If you see people acting in a very frustrated way, recognize that they're being influenced with something that can definitely, create that frustration or aggression type of energy. And a lot of it might be going on up in the head. You might see people walking around with faces that are red, that type of thing. So some herbs that can help with that type of energy. Okay, let's start with Yarrow. Yarrow is considered the master of blood. Now, Yarrow is good for so many things. It can be anti-stroke. Aries people can be definitely prone to stroke. But then there's also this, Aries is very accident prone, especially as children. Children, Aries, have a tendency to, at some point in their life, to fall down and get a pretty big injury on their head. That's very common with Aries children. Now, Yarrow can bring protection. You don't even necessarily have to be consuming it or ingesting it. You can just keep the yarrow near you in like a little pouch, and it is said to bring protection, especially in that head area. Now, also, there's wood betony, which is really good for calming the nerves in the head. That's a really good one. And then the last one I was going to mention is bourrage. Okay, so bourrage is really good for people who they want more courage. They're trying to tap into the courage within them. Definitely bourrage can help with that. But what's interesting about bourrage is it can also help to kind of keep things in balance and can also kind of calm the nerves in the brain in its own way, but without, putting out the fire. So bourrage can be good kind of balance between those things. So if you're an Aries, I would recommend maybe just trying all these things. Of course, I'm not a doctor. I'm not claiming to be a doctor. This is stuff I've been studying for a long time, and these are all ancient remedies. Okay, so there's that. Now, also some stones to mention here. So the dedicated zodiacal birthstone for the sign of Aries is diamonds. Okay, so I put my grandma's diamonds on today. These diamonds are so powerful. I don't think people realize. I mean, yes, they're ridiculously overpriced and it's slave labor and all sorts of things, but they're extremely powerful stones. Okay. And what's trippy is that they're actually a Venetian stone. Diamonds are ruled by Venus. Okay. And on that note, diamonds, or really any stone, is not necessarily ideal for everybody to be wearing on their body. And especially diamonds are so powerful. Just as an example here, if you've got Taurus or Libra ruling either your 6th or your 8th or your 12th house, diamonds might not be the most ideal stone for you to be wearing. But what I always recommend, if you don't know for sure if these stones are good for you, first of all, you can schedule an astrology reading, and that's something that we can look at together. But then also, you can take these stones and put them on top of your journal. If you're new to my recordings, that's my gig. Every single new moon and full moon, I write my journal. New moons, I'm writing down what I'm trying to manifest, because that's the beginning of the growth cycle. When it's a full moon, I write down the growth that I'm grateful for experiencing, but then also what it is I want to let go of. And then I'll take these stones and I'll put them on top of my journal. So those stones are connecting the words that I spelled out, the spells that I'm casting into the universe are, they're making a connection, a direct connection with the heavenly energies. Okay. They're resonating well together without interference of my vessel. I happen to know that it's okay for myself to wear diamonds, but certainly, again, it's different for everybody. Okay, some other stones. Obviously, not everybody has diamonds. So there's plenty of other stones, and I will leave a full extensive list. If you just look in the description section of this recording down below, you will see a full extensive list of stones that specifically resonate well with the sign of Aries. But to name a few, this right here is red coral, which red coral is very directly associated with Mars. It's a Martian stone. It's ruled by Mars, okay? And with that said, red coral can be really good for people who are experiencing a major lack of energy. They need some courage in their life. They need some inspiration. Red coral might be a good stone for you to, keep near your vessel. Okay. And again, if you don't know for sure, then take the stone and put it on top of your journal. And also red coral is very affordable. Okay. So also I wanted to mention, this is kind of an odd one. This is aquamarine. I say it's odd because this is really Pisces birthstone, but it's a very Piscean stone, but it's also, it resonates very well with the Aries energy, but in a much more spiritual, sort of flowy, sort of feminine way. Okay. So if you want to add, that type of energy into the spells that you're casting, you might want to add some aquamarine to your, stones to put on top of your journal. I always add a few. I always add some for protection, some for amplifying, some that specifically resonate, with the heavenly energies, that type of thing. Okay. Another one I wanted to mention here is black kyanite. Really, any kyanite resonates well with the sign of Aries, but more specifically, black kyanite does. And this is one heck of a protective stone, incredibly protective. So if we take diamonds or even like clear crystal quartz, anything that's super clear, those are major amplifiers. Okay. So if you're just amplifying your stuff, maybe there's some things that are floating around that you don't necessarily want to amplify. So a protective stone is always a good idea to add that. At least that's been my best. I've experienced the best results when I'm doing a little combination of stones. There's also something very magical about using the Trinity, using 3 stones. Okay, so I will leave that there. If you would like to schedule an astrology reading, please go to my website, erinwageastrology.com. If you're using a tablet or a device or a phone or something, then there you will see 3 little bars at the top of the website. That's a menu bar. And if you click on that, it'll say book online, and you click there and my calendar will pop up and you can schedule directly through my website. I just want to put this out there. I do have a tendency to miss messages sometimes. I never, ever, ever miss an appointment because I get notifications on every device when somebody schedules a reading and it goes directly into my calendar. But I spend so much time in front of a screen these days that I'm really trying to back off from that. And so sometimes I will miss a message, and I do apologize if you're trying to reach me. The best way to go about it is just schedule readings straight through my website. Okay, you guys, I do hope to hear from some of you. Oh, my website, erinwageastrology.com. I'll put a little bar menu below me here, and you can also just look for a link in the description. Okay, you guys, until next time, namaste to all of you.